Welcome to this conversation where we will be chatting about Andor season two, episodes 7 through 9. All right. So the finale episodes were last night. Ed has watched them. I have not.
They're so
Um,
good.
they're so good. I'm so
They're so good.
excited. We will not be talking about episodes 10 through 12. Only 7 through 9 and everything that has come before. We have been recording these at about 40 minutes in terms of our conversation. We have both set aside an hour if we need it because there was so much in these episodes 7 through 9. So what else do we need to say by way of kind of intro? How are you doing today?
I other than the fact I'm a little sleepy because it was 11:40, something like that when I went
Yes.
to bed. Um, but once you watch them, you will know that you cannot watch the first one and then
Okay. Was
stop.
that your plan to watch the first one? And you were
Last
like,
night was
heck
supposed to be
no.
just one, and then the other two were going to be tonight. And we got done with the first, we're like, oh.
There
So
was a little bit of I thought about doing that, and I was like, we've got to. For those who don't know, my husband is, as we speak, on his way to Atlanta to meet up with our college kid who's graduating on Saturday. I'm flying tomorrow, so we were like, we got to get Robert a full night of sleep. So we did not even touch Disney Plus. But that's good because it'll keep my focus anyway, and you know what's
mhm,
coming, so you can kind of nuance maybe some of what you say based on that without any spoilers.
I will try.
But before we start, and what we're going to do, what we've done each week is just bounce back and forth with just a nugget from me and a nugget from Ed of kind of what felt resonant, and go from there. But I want to tee up something. I'm looking at our notes here. One of the things that Ed texted me as we were both watching these is, I really, I think you had said, I really want Cassian and Bix's treehouse. So anyway,
Mhm.
talk about that as we're just getting started with the deeper stuff. That
Yeah.
fantastic
So
house they live in.
that fantastic house, yes. Like if both my wife Amy and I, as we were watching, we were like
Is
that's
that the
our
dream?
retirement home. That's the retirement home. Like,
Excellent.
oh my gosh. Um, but specifically, my oldest, who has been he's currently in Spain right now and study abroad, and so he's watching him on a very different schedule. Um, uh, he sent me a message with his hope at the end of kind of the way the whole last, arc ended, that in episodes 10 through 12, that house will become basically like the Yavin frat house, for lack of a better word, um that Cassian, K2, Will, and Melshi would bunk in there together. I suggested, however, that most likely what Andor would likely do, what Cassian would likely do, would give that up to Will and Drina, for them,
Yeah.
and
The little
that would
love
be
nest that they've created.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly, yeah, and so. Um, yeah, and that the other three would go and find like a place somewhere else on Yavin.
Yeah, who was it?
Um,
K2,
K2,
Melshi,
Melshi
and
and
Cassian.
Cassian.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that
So,
that place gets a little bit sloppy if
mhm,
it's just a bunch of bros and a
exactly.
droid living there.
And yeah, a
That's
sarcastic,
great.
snarky droid.
Yes,
So,
that's right. That's great.
yeah. So beyond that,
Yeah.
I will say that I think, especially the last two episodes, the first was really setting the table. Seven. Was really setting the table for 8 and 9 for the most part, at least my experience of it. But I think 8 and 9 are two of the most amazing episodes of television I've ever watched. Um,
Cosign.
yeah, like, oh my gosh. It rivals, like, it's definitely up there. I know MaryAnn hasn't watched this. She should. Battlestar Galactica.
Maybe that'll be our next pop culture
Mhm.
casters hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The last two episodes of season 2 and the first two episodes of season 3 of Battlestar are unbelievable.
Hmm.
So good. And this was like right up there, if not better.
It's great.
I felt like, and really they've been essentially like, you know, lengthy movies every week with the 3 episodes, but That just felt like such,
Yeah.
yeah, like it was amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, Ed and I, in preparing for this and also just mainlining all the possible Andor content we can, both listen to a podcast from the Ringer Network called House of R. And for those of you who really want to go super, super deep on this, they had almost or was it over 4 hours?
or no, it was 3 hours and 45 minutes.
They had a 4 hour pod basically about these three episodes. We're not going to do 4 hours. But one of the things I learned from that is, speaking of episode 8 specifically, the Gorman massacre, that there were a lot of comparisons with this, and I did not look up the name of the event, but the experience in Mexico where you have the kind of young um, protesters getting kind of rounded up into this space. Was it in 1968, I think? Or
Yeah, yeah. Tlatelolco,
okay,
Tlatelolco massacre,
got it.
October 2nd, 1968.
68, right. So they get corralled into this space. Um, just as the TIE fighters are buzzing overhead, there are helicopters that kind of buzz overhead. They close off the entrance, and one of the kind of forces takes out one of the police, basically. I mean, the parallels are incredible. Oh, great. You put that in the chat so people can look that up. Um, and but it also, I mean, it has a lot of other, I mean, when they say the galaxy is watching, that also echoes the 1968 Democratic Convention of the whole world is watching this kind of uh, riot and putting that down. The kind of skirmish between the protesters and the police in Chicago that summer. So lots of historical comparisons. And and in fact, maybe this is the time to do this. We're going to kind of bounce back and forth, but I wanted to read, and this is also from the House of R. So let me give credit where it's due. But I wanted to read this letter that they received. Mallory Rubin and Joe Robinson are the co-hosts of this House of R podcast, where they spent 4 hours talking about these episodes. Um, but I want to read this because the historical overlay, I mean, so much, connections to Nazi Germany and other kind of oppressive periods in history, but we're also watching this in 2025 with everything going on in the world. And um, I want to read this email that they received from a listener named John. And John is referring to that moment when the bellhop gives that line to Andor that then becomes such a feature of Rogue One. Rebellions are built on hope. Um, but anyway, they're saying the bellhop makes an offhand remark that eventually is what helps the Rogue One crew find the inspiration they need to go to Scarif. Without that phrase, or even the pain that the bellhop went through, and I love this line, with his father taking him to the square that day, Tarkin deciding to park his space Tesla on top of the people, would the
Don't
Death Star
forget
have
that
been
he
destroyed?
have one.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, there's
he
also
has one.
parenthetical. Yeah,
That's right.
sorry.
That's right. So
Yeah.
yeah, like this chain of events, almost like a Rube Goldberg device, right? Of like this happens and this happens, and each of these is so small, but then it adds up to this big thing. So here's just a couple paragraphs more from the email. Of course, none of us are watching or analyzing Andor in a vacuum. We know what is happening in our country and world right now, and we're all constantly asking, what can we do to help? We all feel so powerless right now as day after day, more executive orders, renditions, agency closures, threats to entitlements, etc., continue to be rolled out, even while so many vulnerable people are being targeted. When the problems are this big, it feels like the solutions have to be equally large, and so none of us are content to settle for reactions that feel too small. We crave big ideas because the threats are so overwhelming. He goes on. However, I think this is where it is important to remember how the relay race of rebellion and resistance works. Even if our resistance is something as seemingly small as sharing hope with others, we have no idea what dividends it might pay out down the road. The important thing, like our friend the bellhop did, is to be on the lookout for opportunities And even if we have but a few words to offer a fellow traveler, who knows how those words might help down the road. So, Ed, I'm curious kind of how that strikes you today or what thoughts you have about this kind of idea of the little pieces that get put together into
Mhm.
something bigger.
Yeah. Real quick, I just wanted to lift up what who just noted in the chat of as soon as I watch Andor, this is what I thought, and my mind went to the Violent Revolution and to Vietnam. So again, you've got these historical
Yep.
parallels. So thank you
Yep.
for that.
And
Um,
someone has said that Star Wars: A New Hope, I mean, that was George Lucas's original comp was the Viet Cong, right? So just,
mhm,
to throw that in
mhm.
there as well, that's very
Yeah.
intentional. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I thought about a comment that on one of my recent posts on my Substack, person had written, and since she put it out publicly, on the site, I can read it here. Um, the Quaker hymn has this line in its chorus: "How can I keep from singing? I found myself singing, how can I keep from seeing? So far, I have no role to play. I imagine God will give me something worthwhile to do. For now, I'm reprinting postcards I designed a few years ago about our democracy and writing to all my state and federal representatives. Perhaps that's enough, but it feels useless."
Mm,
And this is a person who's a member of the congregation I serve right now. And, that's there's some physical issues and things like that she's not able to get out and march. She's not able to do things that she would want to be able to do. And one of my encouragement in response to that, but also in other conversations we've had is no, these little acts matter. It may not feel like it,
mhm,
um, but they do matter.
mm,
Um, I had a conversation yesterday. It was another woman in our congregation who is uh, she's 92, 93. She is amazing. She continues, like, she goes out hiking 3 4 days a week at a nature center. She's awesome, but she came in after um s- one of the many things in the news. It was just like, it's just all feels so useless. Like, it just feel and it's like, and my comment was, no, like, your actions plus mine plus others can make a difference. So
yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah,
You
and yeah, go ahead,
you
Eric.
see
Go
that
ahead.
play out in the show, right? I was so, especially on second watch, but even the first, you see all these little pieces. And if this person hadn't done their part, if this person hadn't done their part, the whole thing falls apart. And Rogue One is very much like that. I mean, it really is tag team. But you've got the people on Coruscant who have locked the door, like while she's giving her speech, they're like, cut the power, cut the feed. And they're like, we just locked it up and the key is up on this other level, and they kind of look at each other. That was their role. That was their
Mhm.
job. You know, the bellhop, rebellions are built on hope, and then he throws that grenade. You have Drina who sends out this distress call, and um and even Ed and I were talking about this before we went live because I was asking him. Ed is more immersed in, I think, the greater Star Wars universe than I have. I've watched the movies and a few of the shows. Um, but when you have this moment where, I mean, Mon's going to give her speech, but she needs Bail Organa to yield the floor to her. And even before that, you have another senator, Senator Irving, who yields the floor to Bail. So it's this starts with Senator Irving, then Bail Organa, then Mon Mothma. And I do have an aside because Ed and I are both Presbyterians, and I really love that it relies on this obscure little bit of legislation. I'm like, it's good to know the parliamentary procedure,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you can weaponize that, you can use that, right? Because Bale's like, I invoke Article whatever. Um, but we need a Senator Irving. Like maybe that the person you're talking about is plays that role, right?
Mhm.
So all of those things matter.
Well, and yeah, I the other thing on the bellhop was also how he, number one, recognized Cassian, right?
Yeah.
When he first comes
Yes.
in,
Yeah.
um, and also that he kind of covers for him. So yes,
Mhm.
there's the rebellion that's built on hope, but also is the we didn't check you in.
Right.
Like, your
Yeah,
name's not even on the list. And
that's right.
those are those. little subtle acts of resistance
Yeah.
that um, are needed all the time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, yeah, I love the fact that he had that role and that
Mhm. You know what
it
it
wasn't.
reminds me of? That
What's that?
that judge up in Wisconsin who, like, there was someone in her courtroom who was
Hmm.
getting targeted by ICE and did end up getting arrested, but she's like, "Go out this door," you know?
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
mean, now she's paying the price for I mean, well, we'll see, but she got arrested for that. But it was such a small act, but it's what she had the ability to do in that moment.
Hmm.
And I think that is what helping this show inspires me to do is just, am I paying enough attention? Am I not so head down in my own life that I'm going to miss the opportunity to just throw just a little sand in the gear, you know?
Hmm.
Or just so anyway.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
and it's also not just in terms of like resistance against, tyranny and fascist regimes and so forth. I serve the church that I serve right now is a relatively small church. We're not thousands of people showing up on a Sunday morning or anything like that. And there's a lot of times in this church that I hear people are like, oh yeah, well, we're not like the big,
Mm,
10,000 person gorilla, crossroads in Cincinnati. Um, but I'm like, no, 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 no. You are making a difference. Like that it's in all these different ways, and we
mhm,
don't know the impact that or the effect that that card will make when we send it to somebody, or that phone call,
mhm.
or that text, or just showing up at their house. And so it's this whole spread of
Yeah.
not just against the fascist regimes, but just about how we are human together.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and
That's
uh,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
That's great.
Hmm.
So yeah, just
Yeah.
the kind of little piece by piece rebellions are built on hope, but are also built on ordinary people doing ordinary things that maybe taken in the aggregate can become extraordinary.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that was where I kind of started and whatever I was really left with as a major theme. I'll kick it over to you. What was something
Yeah.
that really struck you?
Probably the biggest, and again, this one was inspired also by our friends at the House of R. Um, and by the way, it is a 3.5 hour whatever podcast. It is totally worth it. It's
Yeah,
not only there's a couple of really darn hysterical parts
true.
in it, but
Yeah.
and
Those
they
of you
didn't
with long
use.
commutes, it's definitely worth,
Mhm,
tuning in.
yep, mowing lawns, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
Um, they didn't use this phraseology about this, but there was the sense of people recognizing Cassian's calling, for lack of a better word,
Mhm.
um, that he was either not recognizing himself or denying himself.
Yeah.
Um, there was the Force healer, there was Bix. There was the way that it ended with Bix's, like, no, you have to do this. Like,
Mhm.
I can't be holding you back. And this is your call. This messenger was the phrase that kept showing up in there. Um, but in our again our little Presbyterian circles that both MaryAnn and I are part of, um, we have this concept of calling that is that it's this multifaceted, that it is not just me saying I feel called to do X. So specifically, it's a lot seen in when someone becomes a pastor.
Yeah.
That it is not just the person saying I feel called to be a pastor, and the church says, "Great, stamp, you're a pastor." But it is something that has to be affirmed by other groups. And sometimes it comes from the individual first, and sometimes it comes from the community first or other people first. And again, within our context, also the call of the spirit, it's all in there. But I felt that about Cassian, in that he wasn't feeling it or was denying it, didn't want to go there, but yet Bix saw it, and this force healer saw it, and that this pushes there, and that eventually Cassian comes to the place of recognizing it for himself, or at least seems to.
Mhm.
Um, it reminded me of a sermon or something I heard at some point. I don't know who said it, but it was this thing of like when somebody says, "Well, I don't believe in God," and then often good response is, "That's okay because God believes in you." Um, and I thought about that with this sense of this calling, and Marianne, you had noted in a little bit more detail, I think, about the force of the. I don't know. It was sort of where I
Yeah.
saw some of that same
Yes.
overlap. So you kind of wrote
Yes.
about some. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I hadn't thought about uh even the fact that I mean, we'll talk more about the Force in a minute, but the Force healer says he's a messenger. And like, isn't that our call as well? I mean, I
Hmm.
just like we as ministers of word and sacrament, we really are called to be messengers. But anyway, that's just a little aside. I think it really confirms a lot of what you're saying about this multifaceted idea of call. I was really struck on the second watch that I did of the shows of, and I think we're hearing this more from Cassian in these 3 episodes than in previous ones, where he's kind of like, I make my own decisions. I want to do this my way. It's like him trying to assert his own will and his own independence and his own autonomy. And there's a really fascinating exchange. And this isn't exactly the direct quote because I was on the treadmill as I was watching this episode, but the idea of kind of destiny versus free will, right? I think is wrapped up in call also. But at one point, Cassian's talking to Luthen, and he says, "I make my own decisions." And then Luthen says, "You have always come when I've needed you." And he lists off these Aldani, Narkina 5, Gorman. Um, and this is an interesting tension, isn't it? Where it's like Cassian wants to be his own man and feel like he is in charge of his own destiny. And Luthen's like, you have always been there right when you have been needed, not just by Luthen, but by the rebellion. And isn't that part of this mystical thing that we call, where it's like, I do play a part in this. I do need to say yes to it. And yet God, in our language, the force, whatever, however you want to express this in people's own, your own theology, but like God also puts us in the places where we're needed. So it's not
Hmm.
just about us and our own kind of individual decisions. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, and I wonder, the Star Wars movies use a lot of the term like the will of the Force,
mhm,
and that shows up in that. Um, but is there, what if, just playing with the ending of episode 9, what if Bix didn't leave?
mm,
Or what if Bix did agree to what Cassie was saying of let's just leave. Let's just leave. And kind of play with it of like, would the Force still have found him?
mhm,
Found them, found them. Would things still have come to them? Would they, and Cassian kind of did the same thing with his mother in the first season of like, let's just
yeah,
get away. We'll find a place the Empire
yeah,
hasn't touched.
mhm,
Um, and she was like, nope,
yep.
I ain't going anywhere.
Not only nope, but I'm already there, she
Yeah.
says, because
Hmm.
it's in here. Like they can never
Hmm.
touch this place. Here I am
Yeah.
free. That's
Yeah.
so great. You
Yeah.
know what? Why
Yeah.
I was just smiling to myself is okay. In that version of the story where they get away, like they're away on their spaceship, and this big um, space whale swallows them up. Bix and Cassian. They sit in there for 3 days, and then the whale spits them up. And Cassian's like, "All right, I'll go to Nineveh. I mean Yavin."
Hmm.
So just a little call
Hmm.
out to those who know your Jonah.
And
Um,
by the way, have you watched Rebels?
I have not watched Rebels.
There's a
That's
space
next.
whale. There's
Oh,
a
there you
space whale
go.
in
There
Rebels.
you go.
I thought
They
that's where
they
you were
have a
going at first.
no, yeah, there
So,
you go.
mhm,
I did not even know that. So yeah, a little Jonah for you.
yeah.
Yeah, so this kind of tension and creative tension, right? Between we do have agency, but also there are forces, a force at work that works beyond us. And so
Mhm.
yeah, love
Yeah,
it.
and some of it, like I think, when I talk with folks about my experience of guidance is usually it's much more in retrospect
Mm,
that
mhm,
and this I it kind of jumps to what we also talked about the little acts that people do that it's pretty rare that I have experienced something that was like so absolutely crystal clear. Like this is the way. This is the way.
yes.
Um, and that's it. And so absolute certain. It's more of like then looking back and going, aha, I see how that led to this, that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. And um that it maybe you can look at it as saying it was deterministic, or
Mhm,
that's just how things evolved and grew.
mhm,
Um, so there's again, from Marianne and my context, there's a beautiful thing. One of my favorite verses in the entire book of Acts, which is like this book that's the sort of a rough early history of the church. The first big controversy they've got that they have a church council, and their response back to this huge question that the church is deciding is, it seems good to the Holy Spirit and to us. And then it goes into what their decision, thing is, that it's not like this absolute rock solid, this is absolutely it, no other, it seems. I
wow.
just adore that.
Yeah.
And that, the my sense of, and even like the force healer, she's really uncertain about herself. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it
Mhm,
works enough that um and she even thanks Cassian, even though
mhm,
Cassian really didn't do anything, but
yeah.
she thanks him for what she experienced in that. I just thought that was just, yeah.
That is so brilliant, and it tees up beautifully. Let's bump over to really talk more in depth about the Force and how it's been portrayed in this show, because there is this. I love the what do they say in A New Hope? Obi-Wan says it's the Force is something that we can command, but it also governs our actions. I mean,
Hmm.
it's there's a purposefulness to it, and also a you can't pin it down. You
Hmm.
can't. And one of the things I loved about the use of the Force, or what we see of the Force in this show, is it really is. Uh, I mean, I like to tell people, my theology is Jesus, the Force, and Madeline Langle, and the Lord of the Rings. I mean, like those four things, and the Force as something that is a vibe. It's a presence, and not simply uh, something that we can wield with absolute perfection. I love that comp. I had not thought about that from Acts of it seems to us. And then you just have to do your best with it. It seems this is where we're supposed to go. So let's just go until
Hmm.
we need to correct that, right? I mean, we just have to take a step and trust that we're doing the best we can and go from there. But what I loved about the Force in this story is it kind of gets back to that early A New Hope. Well, A New Hope obviously takes place after this, but the idea of the Force as as a connection to a religion that is not just. I mean, it's not just a weapon. Like we come to see the Force as something you can just invoke at will. And here the Force is a lot more mysterious. It's something that can't be pinned down. It's related to healing as opposed to killing. And even in Rogue One, um, Chirrut, is that his name? The kind
Yes.
of I am
Mhm.
one with the Force is with
Force is with
me.
me.
And it really, I mean, I think I mean, I haven't watched it recently, but like he probably uses the Force in kind of some offensive ways as an offensive weapon, but it really is mainly defensive. I mean, he walks through that all that blaster fire, and it's like he's shielded
Mhm.
by the
Mhm.
Force,
Mhm.
or believes he is, and maybe that's all he needs
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
point. And then
By the way, you
Vader, yeah,
will. Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Nope.
go.
Nope. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna
No.
say the last thing is just that Darth Vader, especially at the end of Rogue One, I mean, that savage use of the Force is the antithesis to this idea of the Force as a gentle but powerful force. We need a synonym for force. The force is a force, but anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Well, by the way, Fu just also shared part of what makes the call compelling is our internal narratives. Cassian was trying to find his sister in season one. He's trying to find out why got to leave his home and what it all means. He remains restless until he finds uh, her or what home means or both.
Mm,
Um,
love
yeah, and
that.
as I was reading that, what's the line that our hearts are restless until they are found in you?
Yes,
Is
yes,
that
I was
the
thinking the same thing. Are restless
yeah,
restless until they find rest in thee. I think
yeah,
is that
that's it.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
old
yeah,
old-fashioned language.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and isn't that also the your comparison? By the way, you will want to watch Rogue One again.
Oh,
Just
yeah, well,
one little thing
given.
from watching last night. You will
Okay.
definitely there was some conversation in our house of like, why don't we just watch Rogue One now too? Um, which
You'd
we
really
did
have the
not.
bags under your eyes if you
Oh
did
yeah,
not.
yeah. But how religion, faith, etc., can become can be that thing that is healing, but is
Mhm.
also that thing that we can weaponize. And I think again, we're seeing that right now in the ways
Mhm.
that
Yes.
a a a form of a form of something that is called Christianity is being used as a weapon, and it is not being used for healing and
Mm,
restoration,
yeah.
but it is being used as a cudgel. It is being used as a weapon
Mhm.
to hurt and divide,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
not what the gospel is to be. So, and
Mm,
that
yeah.
kind of jumps into one of the other, and this is kind of where it gets a little on my stuff a little bit dark.
Go for it.
There was a three-line quote from, and I always forget his rat, the head
Partagaz?
of the eyes, Partagas. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Who, by the way, what a great role. I mean, like God, every actor in
There's
this
no weak
entire thing
link in this whole show.
just just nails it.
Yeah,
If this doesn't win a bunch of Emmy awards, I'm going to be hacked.
yeah.
Um,
We riot,
yeah,
as they say.
that's right. Um, but when he's talking with Dedra about the plan, and they were trying to do other options on Edu and trying to figure this out, but there's nothing else that's going to work. So bad luck, Gorman.
Yeah.
Like just those three words was just sort of like, bad luck.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
sort of like, you didn't roll the dice right. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, sucks to be you. And just the absolute utter dismissiveness of and throwing awayness of the people and the culture and the
Mhm.
heritage of, and I noticed how many times as we got to know Gorman in the episodes that they emphasize this, the culture, when they talked with the talking about, when Cassian was in his awesome, like, designer getup, that
Varian
this,
sky.
yeah, that we are, we're 15 generations doing this and we're one of the newer ones.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
And so you got all of this, and it's just, Patagas just is like, bad luck, Gorman. It's
yeah.
just the absolute dismissiveness. And
Yes. Yeah.
that, and in that same conversation of, that your professional ascension will
Mhm.
come through this.
Mhm.
And how easily we dehumanize, how easily it just
That's the
becomes this, that, and then of course you see that in the massacre,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
way that whole thing, went down.
Yeah.
um that when we forget the personhood, and I want to say
Yeah.
humanity because like not everybody there in Star Wars is quote human,
That's right.
um
Yeah.
but is a person and has a
Yeah.
story and has a history, and each of these
Yeah.
cultures has a story and has a
Mm,
history,
mm.
and what we do with
Yeah.
that.
As you're talking, I'm thinking about one of the things that I do in my work as a coach is I work with groups doing anti-racism work, and the way the kind of set of information, the teaching that I use when I do that work. One of the principles of white dominance that we're trying to unravel is the idea of disposability. That there are people that can be commodified and used up and thrown away. That there and the antidote to that is the inherent dignity of all living things. And so as you were talking, I was just really thinking about that. Um, that the empire is the ultimate um, weapon against that inherent dignity. This show has done such an amazing job making Ferrex feel like a really real place with the bricks and all of their rituals. Same with Chandrila to some extent, although we kind of just get the pretty, the wedding, which is very kind of upper crust society, but still, lots of traditions there, and of course, Gorman. Um, and and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, talking to your parishioner about, her feeling of how can I even make a difference is if what we are fighting or resisting is the dehumanization and the kind of disposability of people, small actions every day that affirm the dignity of other people and ourselves is absolutely resistance to that. It's not parenthetical at all. It's central. And everything else, I mean, maybe it's not sufficient. Like maybe we do need to think on bigger systemic levels, but we can't do it without that first initial assumption that every being has inherent dignity. And so, that's part of why we're talking about this show is that it lifts up that theme so beautifully.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And even with that, there was one of the Marianne had mentioned right from the outset that we both kind of been diving deep into some of the deeper reflections that are online and so forth on these episodes. There's one that I read um, last night about 10 to 12, but there's no spoilers with this, so just to say. um, uh, but that what one of the things this show has done is it has humanized both sides. That
Yes.
Dedra and Cyril, I mean, they're fascists, they're Nazis, they're awful. But also, like, they're they're humanized in this. They're not just
Mhm.
a one-sided,
Yeah,
black hat wearing,
that's right.
just plain evil person. But you can look at Cyril, and we haven't even talked about his arc. Holy
Yeah.
cow.
Let's go there
But
next. Finish your thought, but
okay,
yeah.
but like with Cyril, you can see why, the way they set up this whole crazy relationship with his mother, that
Mhm.
why he is the way that he is,
Yep.
and the ways that he deals with the world, and um so yeah, like it does that with virtually every character who's got some measure of screen time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you sent me an article that I haven't read yet, but, I saw the clicked through the headline and then got distracted about the empathy that is woven through this show, and not just empathy to show that these people are human. It's interesting because, Mon Mothma in her speech talks about, um, that something that the assault on truth, which I think we'll get to in a minute, allows the monster to rise, and the monster that we have allowed to rise is Emperor Palpatine. Um, but this show really resists that someone is just in the category of monster. I mean, Palpatine is. We don't even see Palpatine. Maybe we do in 10 through 12. Don't tell me. But like, he's just this off-screen force, if you will. Um, but everyone else is just human beings that, were it not for fateful decisions and things, could have gone a different way. Okay, so here's what I want to say about Cyril. And maybe we'll get into your Les Mis comp. But have you read The Other Wes Moore? Do you know that book?
No, I do not.
Okay. Wes Moore is the current governor of Maryland, but he wrote a book years and years ago called The Other Wes Moore, um, and about another young man his age named Wes Moore, who I haven't read the book in a long time, but he ends up in prison. I mean, like Westmore, current governor, his life went on a certain trajectory, and the other Westmore, in some ways, never had a chance. I mean, just really, you know, was not given a lot of the things that allowed Westmore to succeed. So it's about privilege and how we, um, the work around us and the community around us can help us succeed or not. Okay, so my theory or what I'm thinking about is that Cyril and Cassian are examples of the other Westmore. Like both of them have a sense of right and wrong. Both of them can be kind of hot headed, and Cassian gets put on the trajectory he's on because he has loving parents who saw something in him and helped nurture that in him. I mean, that wonderful scene with Clem, his dad, his adopted dad, where he's like, look down, like you're gonna miss things if you don't look at the little things around you. And that is kind of a superpower that he nurtures. Um, and I mean, because Cassian could be have, I mean, he became a thief for a while and then he gets pulled back into this greater cause. Cyril, on the other hand, has this mother who is very withholding of love. And he gets put, I mean, he's been coded a lot, and people have talked about this, about him kind of being an incel type, character. What would have been possible in Cyril's life if he had had a community that nurtured him? And there's a lot being written right now and talked about with young men and them losing their way and getting into these kind of communities of kind of um, despair, and then that kind of hardens into rigidity and grievance, and that's coming out in all kinds of ways. But what do we, you and I, as people who nurture communities, how do we be a part of calling those folks back into something greater? I mean, Cyril wants to be part of something greater than himself, and he just got wrapped up with the wrong one. I mean, I'm not saying he's a victim, a victim of this. I mean, he makes choices, but anyway, curious kind
Uh-huh.
of how you're thinking about that character and these kind of things.
I had not actually, it is so obvious. I had actually not really thought about that comparison between him and Cassian directly, of, that they're kind of mirrors of each other, shadows of each other, that, you know, there's each of them through the whole series. I can say that. Yeah. Okay. Um, it's just like, wait, okay, might make sure I'm not saying anything.
Yeah,
Um, their mothers are hanging over both of them. I mean, even in
yeah,
the um the treehouse, there's the picture
yeah.
of
Marva.
Marva, and
Yeah.
that their mothers are just still, present with that. So um and we carry all that stuff,
Yeah.
and so that you take this beyond this of how we recognize what are we carrying from our families of origin.
Mhm.
um And
Yeah.
Foo's just rocking it in the comments. By the
Yes.
way, yeah, what do you think about Cyril's need for order and his lack of a father figure and mother figure? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that he didn't have
Mhm.
that.
You have
Um,
this Uncle Harlow who's just off. I mean, he's sort of, if there's any father figure, it's him, and he's just as problematic and withholding as Edie is.
mhm.
And
And apparently
again,
he's got a
yeah,
record too,
right,
according to
exactly, right.
Dedra.
Dedra's like, yeah, I've read his ISB file. I mean, and again, it doesn't let Cyril off the hook. But I also, again, with this empathy lens, um, I'm so intrigued. And in the House of R, they talked a lot about this moment where Cassian says, "Who are you?" when Cyril's holding the blaster up to him. And Cyril's like, I have, and here's where I'm going to tee you up to Les Mis. Like, I have dedicated my life to fighting people like him and him directly, and he doesn't even know who I am. And he starts to lower that blaster, and
Mhm,
that's when he takes the fatal shot from Rylands. And so that lowering of the blaster is so fascinating, and that's
mhm,
kind of a we'll never know. Could that have been uh, a transformation? And you almost see it happening in the plaza, and then he sees Cassian, and he's like right back to.
mhm.
So anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Do you want to talk about your Les Mis? piece of
I
this? I don't know.
I will. I'm
Yeah.
gonna pause that real quick. It's
Yeah.
interesting for me. I'm also at the same time. I know Mariana hasn't watched this. I'm also watching The Last of Us right now on HBO, and which is, if you are squeamish, don't watch it. Um, but it is an amazing character study, and there's a lot of like what could have been, what causes these characters, and so not only watching the shows, but also listening to House of Horrors commentary on both of them going on at the same time.
Yeah.
There's these, interludes that keep intersecting. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of what felt like very direct Les Mis comparisons in the whole
Mhm.
Gorman piece. The barricades are going up, and the singing, the point where they start singing the anthem. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And how that anthem drowns out. It's just that one voice. So this goes back to that one thing. That one voice that starts it drowns out the shouting
Yep. Yep.
and turns it to the song that
Mhm.
is the song about all of them and their
Do you
culture
hear
and their
the people
heritage. People
sing?
sing, exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Singing the song of Angry Ben, and
Yeah.
um but was Cyril like Javert, or was
Mhm.
Dedra more
Yeah.
Javert,
Yeah.
because Dedra shares about kind of growing up, in a kinder house. I remember what
Yeah,
they do some
Kinderblock. Oh my
kinder block,
gosh. Doesn't that sound
so
awful?
without a family,
Yeah.
and that this is really all she's known
Yeah.
is this, and
And yeah,
Javert
yeah. And
has that
that's
same thing.
the question that just came in from our PhD friend. Thank you so much for your fantastic questions. Yeah, that she had the same lack of nurture.
Mhm.
And look where she ended up. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then, there's Cassian Valjean, and you can kind of keep going, but
Oh yeah.
um that in a sense there is a bit of that, in I have not, full disclosure, I have not read Les Mis. I have tried a few times, haven't made it. Seen the musical many times.
Oh yeah.
Um and but there is a sense with Valjean that all he's trying to do is find a place of staying out of things.
Mm,
And there's with
yeah.
Cassian,
That's great.
tries tries to do that. Like, I'm
Mhm.
trying to, okay, I will do this. Now let's go and
Yep.
go back home. Okay,
Hmm.
now we'll do this. Now I'm gonna go and go back home. Um and that there's a bit of the Valjean
Hmm.
for
Yes.
Cassian as well.
Yeah.
Um
That's a
mhm,
beautiful comparison. Yeah, I mean, the themes in this show are universal, right?
mhm,
There are so many comps here, and even Lazine, that the man who starts the singing. I mean, he has kind of some Valjean. I mean, he helps try to bring one of the younger revolutionaries to safety. I mean, that's kind of a Marius,
mhm,
him bringing him through the sewers. Unfortunately, the character in Andor dies, but he's carrying him, and so these Carol Rylands and Lizine, both older generation that I think have some reservations about this revolutionary nature and this kind of affirmative or aggressive expression of resistance. And then they have to watch the younger generation perish as a result of this. And I found the ultimate irony. There's so many kind of, I think it's called situational irony, where the audience is aware of something that the characters aren't. I think that's what situational irony. There's also dramatic irony. I may be confusing those two terms, but like they start chanting, "We are the gore, the galaxy is watching," and then they shift into the song, which is much more just here's who we are. And the irony is that the galaxy really isn't watching, or if they are, they're watching with this veneer of, well, you guys deserve what's coming, right? Because of all the propaganda that has been weaponized against the gore. And so it's like the people don't even know in this, the characters don't even realize the extent to which that shift to the song is faithful and true, because then you have this desperate message is, will no one help us? And people find out about it, but then you have the Empire coming in with their like, here's our narrative. You
Yeah.
know, history's written by the winners, as they say.
Yeah.
So do you
Wasn't that
want to,
even
yeah, go ahead.
wasn't that even sort of
Mm.
mentioned? I feel like there was a line in there that was sort of like there was a history is written by the winners, like from
I
Vale.
think Bale, yeah,
Yeah,
Bale says
said
that.
something of that. So
Yes, yes,
what
exactly.
we have not talked about Mon's speech and kind of the whole thing of like her ending of
Yeah, go
and
for it.
um so I have loved her arc, um and especially the fact that in the original Star Wars movies that came out, the leader of the rebellion shows up for this tiny little bit of time in Return of the Jedi,
Yep.
and that's it. And sort of in the things since in Rebels and in Clone Wars and uh, other animated stuff, and now of course here, and then the little blips in, and she was even cut out. She was actually in Revenge of the Sith, but they cut her scene
Yeah.
entirely. Um, and you can find it on the Blu-ray. But
Mm,
so I love the fact that she was very centered in this story,
mhm.
and that um, it reflected all the complexities of what she had. Of I'm a senator, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm an activist, I'm a
Yeah.
rebel. Like how all this comes together. But I loved, and this is more just on the portrayal.
Mm,
I absolutely loved the sense that when Genevieve O'Reilly got up to do this speech, you and maybe I'm reading into it, but it's totally felt like the beginning was that very kind of like the words are there, but there's like the tentativeness and the uncertainty of like, am I really doing this? Am I really doing this? And then you like the strength that just
yes.
continues to grow in what she did. And there was something on my second watch through, she had that charm or that the pin and then sort
Mhm.
of draping around. And I don't know what that one was, but I noticed that right before she spoke, she did this on
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
and then spoke. And I don't know, is that like something from Chandrila? Is that something of,
Ah,
or was that
wow.
her microphone? I don't know.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
but that I adored that. And that it
Mhm.
was just such a human portrayal that if you are about to just put it all out there
Yeah.
and you know what's going to happen right afterwards.
Mhm.
And she starts out what feels very scared,
Yep.
and then there's just such a strength and power as she
Mhm.
continues. It
Yeah.
was so, oof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took it as that's her microphone, but I
Okay.
love that they showed it. They didn't have to show that. They don't have
Hmm.
to reveal to us how their voices are being amplified, and the fact that it is right there over her heart,
Hmm.
that's gotta be I mean, that's intentional. That's a
Hmm.
brilliant costume department, and all of the pieces coming together. Okay, so here's my hot take about the speech. The speech is amazing, and she does an outstanding job, and it's written so beautifully. I wouldn't put it in the top 5 most impactful speeches in this series. In terms of beautiful rhetoric, it obviously makes a. I mean, it's probably the most important speech, but it's very simple. Rhetorically, there's not a lot to it. I would put Marva's speech above it, Kino Loy's speech above it, Nemec's manifesto, um, Luthen's kind of speech about, my heart's a sunless space. Um, and again, it's nothing against the portrayal but what it said to me was there are times when it is you need to act and you don't need to do it with a flourish. Just say what you know to be true. Like I think this kind of speaks to the what I love about this show is it kind of gets rid of the Skywalker is special people who have these special gifts. I mean, Cassian, they're kind of heading towards that, but otherwise, um, She just says this was a genocide and it's Emperor Palpatine's fault, and we all know it. And that's the message of it. And I love that there aren't these rhetorical flourishes, and and it was very short. Maybe she would have gone on if they hadn't cut the power, but I love that it's just stripped down. It's just a bare bones speech. I don't know if
Mhm.
you felt that as well, but I just thought that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, it was a very simple speech, and I'm curious. I'm trying to remember if it was in one of our text exchanges or what, but after every trio of episodes, they've been posting this Andor declassified video,
Mm,
and in the one for this one, they noted that the actual speech is much longer, or at least somewhat
yes.
longer,
Yeah.
and that Genevieve O'Reilly insisted on them filming her doing the entirety of
Mhm.
it. And so Mike, I guarantee that's going to show up either in another YouTube video or more likely on the Blu-ray when it comes out.
Yes. Yeah. Can't wait.
I want to see that. I
Yeah.
really want to see that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I did feel a little bit like, and both Marion and I, we get up and speak for a living. Like this is
Mhm.
part of what we do as pastors.
Yep.
It did feel like a few points was like there's a jump. Like,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
um and so yeah, so I'm curious about what the sense of the whole
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
what hopefully we see that. We better see that. I'm going to be
Yeah.
ticked if we don't. um
Absolutely. Yeah,
so
I love that. I mean, and they talk, and I know there's some stuff of trying to square with Rebels here, of because there's a speech in that series as well. Because then they're like, all right, they're going to whisk her away, and she needs to give a speech, and it needs to be heard by as many people as possible. And yeah, you just named it. You and I speak for a living. Many people do. Our words matter, and I really love that they are acknowledging that that does matter. That's not. I mean, sometimes we talk a lot about empty words or like, oh, that's just you're just kind of speaking, and what difference does that make? Um, you know, um, it's actions that matter, but speech is an action. It's not, again, it's not sufficient, but it is important. And
mhm,
so those words, and again, going back to the bit about what can each of us do, um, what
mhm,
we our the speech we put into the world really matters, and it doesn't need to be dressed up. I mean,
mhm,
that expression, "Tell the truth even if your voice shakes." She
mhm,
exemplified that so well,
mhm.
and so I give her props for that.
Yeah, and our words and our actions are necessary because we can do all kinds of actions, but sometimes unless we're explaining why we're doing what we're doing,
Oh, great. Yes.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And
Right.
if all you're doing is saying things but not actually doing anything, that doesn't matter. Like it,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
one of my dear friends is a preaching coach, and I worked with him for about a year, a couple of years back. And one of the things Chip shared was about how like as a preacher you have to have ethos, pathos, and logos. So like
Logos.
the logos is the
Yeah.
intelligence, the words, the kind of the head stuff. um the ethos is how do you actually embody it, and the pathos is the emotional side. And Chip was like, you gotta, how do you balance all of those? And I will say in Mon's speech, those were all there. Like the
You're
facts were
right.
there, the logos was there, the pathos was there, like the emotion, the deep
Mhm.
sense of this is um but also then the ethos, because it
Yeah.
is not only a bold action to get up and do and say what she said, but then also the we're out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm in fully in the rebellion. And
Mhm.
um
Yeah.
yeah, so
Ah, I love it.
so
Oh,
good.
man. It is
Yeah.
straight up 1 o'clock, so we need to close. But there's, gosh, so much more that we could say. And a couple of just notes. I'm going to be away next week in Scotland, and I will not be in a place where we can record Pop Culture Pastors Hour next week, but we will do it. We're talking about the week of Memorial Day, so just you'll have a little more time. Those of you who are watching along with us, you'll have even more time to watch along, so that you can join us for episodes 10 through 12. That'll be a little bit later. And then we have talked about watching Rogue One as kind of a coda. So we'll have two more episodes of our conversations, and then yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll pick up The Last of Us, or I'll finally watch Battlestar Galactica, or we'll figure out what else is in the zeitgeist, and you
I'd
know,
recommend Battlestar first, personally.
yeah. Okay. All
So
right.
much
Sounds
of
good.
the so
All
all
right.
right.
Duly noted. But
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. This will be up on the Blue Room feed. Those of you who came in a little late, I see my brother's name up here. Good to see you. Oh, and that's a vote for Battlestar. So it'll be up on the Blue Room. We'll link to it. Those of you who haven't followed Imago Scriptura, it's a fantastic read. Always inspiring and fun and full of great stuff. And it'll also be on the podcast feed for those who want to listen to uh, the the audio. It'll be there as well. So
By the way, there's another Battlestar.
yes.
Brandon chimes in with "So say we all." Yep.
Okay. All
Hmm.
right. Well,
Yep.
let's give that some good thought.
Yep.
I yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone. Peace be with you. May the force be with you, as Beth says. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time on
See
the
y'all.
other side of Scotland. Take
Hmm.
care, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.